Welcome back, everybody, to the Even Your Dynasty show.
We just got breaking news in.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Even Your Dynasty show. We are back with a Tuesday morning kind of emergency podcast. Obviously, the news broke yesterday morning that Giants manager Bob Melvin has been fired after only 2 seasons with the club, 161 and a 163 record. They won 80 wins last year. This season, they won 81, finished right at 500, continue to finish in that mid 79 to 80 win total every year. It's now 4 straight years finishing there. This is now going to be their third manager in their last 4 opening days, I guess you could say, coming into next season. So we're going to kind of talk a little bit about the firing. We'll dive into some of Posey's comments and then some of the names that have been brought up. It's obviously not going to necessarily be every single name that we hear interviewing for the position or as a candidate, but these are kind of the early names that have popped up, and we'll dive into that. But before that, for those of you that didn't see, last night we did have an interview with Giants left-handed pitcher prospect, number 17 prospect, if you go off Baseball America's rankings, Luis De La Torre. Very great kid. Awesome to talk with him. He has a really unique story. Somebody at the tail end of the show mentioned, they can make a Disney movie out of his, pathway to the major leagues or to professional baseball, I should say. A very fun conversation with him. You got to hear a lot. So make sure you guys check it out. It's in the live shows, or you go into the playlist. You can go under player interviews. Our hope is to have a new player on with us every Monday. We've got a handful lined up so far. We're going to try and bring those to you guys every Monday. It'll be about 8:30 p.m. Pacific time. Hopefully we'll be right after Monday Night Football. So it won't interfere with any of you guys being able to watch the Monday Night Football games. And so keep an eye on that. When I go through these names, I'll for sure, I'll kind of give a little bit of thoughts, but we're going to dive probably deeper into that on our Friday night live show. Our live shows for the weeks have been moved to Friday nights for the off season. It'll probably go back to Thursday nights once we get back into the regular season for 2026. And then lastly, if you guys do enjoy the content, please do hit that like, hit that subscribe, all that good stuff. We're going to have a lot of content coming this off season. We're going to be adding, a whole ton of things, a bunch of things like, potentially merchandise, a membership side, all kinds of things. It won't, all the stuff we already provide is going to remain on the free side, but we're going to try and do extra things for you guys to provide, better experience for everybody. So appreciate you all for all the support you guys have given us over the last couple of years, and we're going to just keep it coming. So jumping right into Bob Melvin, he had his option picked up back in July, I think on July 1st. Which is common. You see that with a lot of teams don't want their managers managing on a, kind of a lame duck season. That's a very normal thing. It doesn't necessarily mean much for job security. It's more just they don't want their players trying to play for a guy that doesn't seem committed beyond that year. So they picked up his option, and, to Posey's credit, he didn't mess around. They collapsed twice this season. First being in, late June to July, where they dropped all the way from 12 games over 500 down under 500. And eventually, I think they were at 500 essentially on the All-Star or at the trade deadline when they sold off a bunch of relievers. Then they go on a little bit of a run after falling all the way down to, I think, 7 games under 500 was their low point. And they go on a little bit of a run to drag themselves back into the wild card race. Although, to the credit, it took a historic collapse by the Mets to even get back in the race. So I don't know how much you really want to credit the Giants for getting to 2 games over 500 at one point. But they get back in, have a chance. They control they reached a point where they controlled their destiny with, 15 or so games left in the year, and then they collapsed again. So at that point, you can't collapse twice in one season. And we can say all we want about the bullpen and all these things and give endless excuses to Bob Melvin. The reality is Ryan Walker doesn't have one of the worst years by a Giants reliever we've seen in a while in clutch situations, save opportunities. The Giants make the playoffs because they missed by 2 games. If Elliot Ramos doesn't turn into a complete butcher in left field, there's a chance they make the playoffs. We could go down the list and just name off all these things that happen where it's not just Bob's fault. But the reality is, if you collapse twice in one season and you completely underperform expectations, you need a new voice at the top. This is the right move. It's the right time to do this. I applaud Buster for not, staying loyal to this and subjecting the fans to another season where you have guys like Willie, Rafi, and Chapman and Logan all in their primes right now. I don't want to see us waste another year with Bob Melvin at the manager spot and it possibly just waste the season where you underperform a third straight year with that at the helm. So I applaud him. It's great that he showed just this desire to win and unwillingness to bend on his expectations. So I think that's great to have that up at the top. Now, a couple other guys are out as well. Matt Williams, third base coach, is gone. Ryan Christensen is gone. He was the bench coach. The rest of them, it sounds like that's it that are like completely out for sure. I know a lot of people probably want to see Pat Burrell go. There's still time. It sounds like everybody else, when they bring in a new manager, they're going to let that manager, cover or evaluate and make decisions on the rest of the coaching staff. Frankly, almost all of them could go. The only guy I really, really, really like that I hope they keep around is pitching coach JP Martinez. I think he's a really good pitching coach. I felt like he did a good amount with what he had, especially early in the season. Obviously, it kind of fell apart late, but part of that was young players up at their innings. They got rid of most of his good players in the bullpen. The rotation was just a patchwork unit by the end of the season. I can't put too much on the pitching coach for that situation. So we'll see what happens there. Now, Posey made some comments on the firing. We'll kind of touch on his comments on firing Bob Melvin. After careful evaluation, we determined that making a change in leadership was in the best interest of the team. The last couple of months have been both disappointing and frustrating for all of us, and we did not perform up to our standards. We now turn our focus to identifying a new leader to guide us forward, which is exactly kind of what I just touched on. You can't collapse twice in one season and continue with what you have. It's just unacceptable. He made a comment on what he's looking for in his next manager in the next search. So he's generally pretty open with this managerial search. His main goal is to find someone who is, quote, obsessive about the details, obsessive about the work, and getting the most out of our players and our staff. And yeah, I mean that a lot. You could read those comments, and it definitely sounds a lot like the Kapler staff. Obviously, I had issues with Kapler. I didn't think he was a great culture guy and long-term guy. I do think he did a better job than Bob Melvin. I will be clear about that. He was definitely more prepared, it felt like, for in-game decisions, more consistent with his decisions in games. I don't think it was a formula to breed World Series champions and long-term success, but and I can't get behind a guy that wasn't, he didn't like speaking in front of the team, and like he would text people more. That to me, that's all just weird as a leader of men. But he got more out of it can't even really be argued. He got more out of less than Bob Melvin did. So I could see them going back to, kind of going back to the well and trying to get somebody that used to be on his staff. And when you look at the names that have been brought up, you're going to see, a couple familiar names and that fit that, MO. Now, starting off, some names to watch. Starting off with the elephant in the room, Bruce Bochy is no longer the manager of the Texas Rangers. They parted ways. Of course, his name's going to get brought up. And it wouldn't even shock me if they brought Bochy back. I personally, that is not what I would do. I think it's time to move on from that. Now, that said, if you bring Bochy back and you win, and he comes back for 2 years and you win a World Series in those 2 years, you do not care about what comes next. But he is 72 years old. He's probably only got 2 years left in him, maybe 3 if you're lucky. And I want to have somebody that has a chance to be more of a long-term solution. I don't want to be trying to relive this in 2 years trying to find a new manager. And while they could, in theory, try and bring Bochy in and then have some kind of succession plan in place, that is easier, said, that's easy to say than do in practice, because let's use Hundley as an example. Like, you bring Bochy in and you bring Nick Hundley as your bench coach or something like that, and there can be all the handshake agreements in the world and say, yeah, I'm going to stay for 2 years here as a bench coach, and then I'll be the manager right after Bochy steps away. What happens if those 2 years go bad? He's not going to get the job. Like, that's just not going to happen. So Hundley has to know, like, there's no real assurances there. And then if you have a really good first year, the odds are the rest of the league is going to try and take him as their managers. Like, the other openings that come up around the league, they're going to try and bring him in. And if you, if you had a good year, you can't assume you're going to have another good year and get the job. Like, if the next year goes horribly, you're going to probably still not get the job in San Francisco. And then you just lost all these other opportunities elsewhere. So it's easy to say you want to do something like a succession plan. It's not that easy to actually accomplish. Which, Nick Hundley, that's another name that's been brought up. He was at the Willie Mack Award. I'm not really a believer in coincidences. I find it odd that somebody mentioned he may have been at the one in 2022. I do not recall that, but I know he hasn't really been at many of them in the past. That's the only other one I've heard that he might have been at. I don't think it's a coincidence that Bob Melvin's job was just red hot and suddenly Nick Hundley shows up at the Willie Mack Award. And I don't feel like that's just a coincidence. I feel like there was some genuine discussions that took place at that time. So Nick Hundley's another name to watch. He would be kind of that old school attention to detail type player, demands the best out of his guys, wants guys to play the game the right way. And, he was Buster Posey's backup for 2 seasons, was a very good backup while here, was obviously very well regarded by teammates as a Willie Mack Award winner. He is a guy that I think Posey would love to have as his next manager. Somebody with some familiarity to the last coaching staff, Craig Albernaz, was brought up. He is currently Stephen Vogt's bench coach in Cleveland. They've obviously done a great job in Cleveland since he's been there. He was Giants bullpen coach when he was here. So that's another name to keep an eye on. He's a guy I wouldn't be shocked either. I think Posey has a great relationship with him. I think Posey thinks highly of him. And that would be kind of that, similar, coming from the Kapler staff, it's going to be that, attention to detail, well-prepared, analytical-minded coach, but hopefully more of a leader than what we saw with Kapler. I think that would be the hope out of that. Other names that have been mentioned, Mark DeRosa. He's currently the MLB.com or MLB analyst on MLB Network. He's been the manager of a couple World Baseball Classic teams. I don't know how that would really transition to managing over 162 games when your experience consists of coaching a bunch of all-stars, basically, for Team USA. So we would have to kind of just see how that would work out. I'm not necessarily opposed to that, but I think the biggest draw with a guy like DeRosa is, he is going to be a player's manager. He is a guy that I think a lot of these guys really like around the league. Maybe it helps bring more talent to San Francisco, but at the same time, I'm not sure how good of an actual manager he would be over the course of a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever. Moving on. Skip Schumacher, I think he should be near the top of this list. That's, he obviously did a great job in Miami. He kind of got undermined a little bit. They fired the president there, Kim Eng. While he was there, he didn't agree with it. He didn't agree with the incoming people, and he left and he went to Texas. I think he's going to be probably the top managerial candidate in baseball. So anytime you can land that, I don't think that's I think that's something we would all be very excited about. So I think Skip Schumacher should be near the top of the list. There are some rumors that he's kind of lined up to take Texas job now that Bochy left. So he might not be on the market long, but we will see. He's definitely someone Posey should be giving a call to. And then the last name that got thrown out there, Andrew Baggerly brought this up, and I find it kind of fascinating. And this would be kind of the ultimate boomer bust name, and that is Tony Vitello, who is the manager or head coach. I think they call him head coaches in in college, but the head coach of the University of Tennessee, who was one of the worst big school programs, especially in the SEC, ACC, like that Southeast conferences. That baseball is a huge deal, college baseball. And he took over one of the worst laughing stock programs down there, and he has turned them into a powerhouse. You might see him, most years. For people that aren't familiar with him, you might see him as one of the analyst that often joins the panel for like the MLB draft. He gives his thoughts on a lot of guys. Obviously, the Giants have taken a lot of University of Tennessee players in recent years, guys like Maui Ahuna, Gavin Keelan this year. They just went and traded for Drew Gilbert. A lot of those guys have, I saw them liking comments about bringing Tony Vitello to San Francisco, which, I mean, why wouldn't they? But it would be an interesting situation because nobody really ever makes a jump straight from college to the pros, especially with zero experience in professional ball in any capacity. He has not been a pro player in any capacity, and there's a big jump going from coaching student athletes to professionals, and like that is a massive difference. So I think he has potential, but that's a huge risk for a team that thinks that they need to win right now. A lot of people have brought up Pat Murphy. He did it going from Arizona State to the Brewers, but Pat Murphy had experience in the major leagues. He had been an interim manager back in 2015. I think it was with San Diego. He had played in the major leagues. Like, he had professional experience in his career. He understands that he understood the difference before ever coming back to coach or to manage the Brewers. So a little bit of apples and oranges between Murphy and Tony Vitello, but Tony Vitello, I mean, he'd be an exciting, fiery coach, and I think any of us would enjoy watching him as the manager. You'd love his passion. He's only 46 years old, so it'd be very interesting hire, and I don't think a name like that just gets pulled out of nowhere. I don't think that's someone that just we throw in for speculation. If they're bringing him up, I think that's because there is a genuine interest from the Giants. Somebody has heard from, whether it's Posey or Manassian or any of these guys, that name has been brought up. So I don't think that's just a throw-in name. I feel like that's got to be coming from somewhere. That's all I have for today, though. That's all we're going to touch on for today's show. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Like I said, join us Friday night for our live show. We will definitely dive way deeper into some of these names and discuss some of this. And then you guys can also ask any of your questions that you guys want us, any topics you guys want to talk about. And then make sure you go, once again, make sure you go check out our interview with Luis De La Torre from yesterday. I think you guys will really enjoy that and love hearing from him. So other than that, go Giants, and we will catch you on Friday.